Hey everyone. I wanted to do a quick review, and I don't exactly know how to talk about this book, because of how much I liked it. But, this is going to be my review of Heart's Blood by Juliet Marillier. I completely loved this book. I read it, or I bought it, I should say, based on the recommendation from, Renee over at Nahomos 2. Not a personal recommendation, but she just did a review of this, and I saw the video, and I then asked her about it, asked her for a bit more detail, because I said, like, I love Beauty and the Beast retellings, and I love Ireland and folklore and all that. So, yeah, so I bought this maybe a year or two ago, and I finally got around to reading it. This was a completely spur-of-the-moment read for July, and oh my gosh, am I excited that I read this, and so glad that I did, because it was just wonderful. It's basically, I guess I'll read you guys the back, because it's going to be really hard for me to describe this book otherwise. But it says, Whistling Tor is a place of secrets, a mysterious wooded hill housing the crumbling fortress belonging to Anluan. I hope I'm saying that right. A chieftain whose name is spoken throughout the region in tones of revulsion and bitterness. A curse lies over Anluan's family and his people, and the woods hold a perilous force whose every whisper threatens doom. Then the young scribe, Katrin, I would probably pronounce it Katrin, appears in Anluan's garden, admiring the rare plant known as Heart's Blood. Retained to sort through entangled family documents, Katrin, I don't know how I have pronounced her name like 5 different times during this book, brings about the unexpected changes in the household, casting a hopeful light against the despairing shadows. But even as Katrin brings solace to Anluan, the promise of something more between them, and the promise of something more between them, I'm sorry, I can't talk. He remains enthralled to the darkness surrounding Whistling Tor. To free Anluan's burdened soul, Katrin must unravel the web of sorcery woven by his ancestors before it claims his life and their love. Yeah, I completely loved this. This was my first Juliet Marillier, and I would probably give this somewhere between a 4 and a 4.5. My only 2 issues with it were, and actually one wasn't even really an issue, so I would really say 4.5 out of 5. So my docking half a star is, I heard before this that, before I got this, that, Juliet Marillier, in more than one of her novels, has some upsetting situations, concerning the main female characters, mainly, in this and in Daughter of the Forest. There are female abuse situations. In Daughter of the Forest, I've heard that it's actually like a rape, situation that happens, and in this, as far as I know, there is physical abuse, but maybe not physical sexual abuse. But it could be that I just missed that. I don't know. But anyway, I don't know how to feel about that, because it's something that was really, really hard for me to read. And it's a reason why I'm not really looking forward to reading Daughter of the Forest. However, at least in this, she uses what happens to Katrin as a way, or Katrin, as a way for her to reclaim who she is as a person, if that makes sense. Like, and I don't mean that that's like the tool, I guess, I don't know, but like basically after that happens, she's basically a broken person, and that's at the start of the novel. And then it's basically about how she rediscovers who she is and how strong she can be as a person, through getting to know all these other people, and trying to build herself back up after this horrific experience. So I would say that that was a really difficult thing to read about. And again, it's not a spoiler because you pretty much know what happens like within the first 20 pages of the book. But yeah, so it's a really difficult thing to read about. But I really liked where it went from there, like how Katrine, or Katrin, how would you guys pronounce her name? I don't know, but, I really like how she was able to, rediscover who she was and kind of build herself back up and understand, that there are people, that just because there are certain bad people in the world doesn't mean that there aren't people in the world who can love her, and be kind and stuff. So that was good. That was a good thing to come out of that. So yeah, but that's the reason why I had to dock it like half a star, because I didn't know how to feel about it. It was an uncomfortable situation, but then good things happened afterwards. So yeah. And then, the other thing that I was a little bit iffy about, but that I really didn't, I don't know, it didn't end up bothering me. I was actually pretty proud of myself for this, but I realized who the predominant villain in this was, pretty much as soon as they were introduced. Okay, I wouldn't say as soon as, but within maybe 10 pages of them being introduced, I was like, this person is just pure evil, and they're going to cause a lot of trouble. And yeah, so there was one aspect of it though that I did not guess, but then once I read that part, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. But yeah, so that was something that doesn't usually happen for me, but that I actually really enjoyed about this book. And then as far as everything else goes, I love the character of Anluan. I love the way he's described as far as his physical appearance, as far as his like personality. I loved him as a character. And there were times, I don't know if I mentioned, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which is why I picked it up pretty much. But because of that, there are some situations between Katrin and Anluan in the beginning and probably through until the middle, where you're just like, he's being kind of a jerk. But I don't know, his personality, like, it's still a really good, he's still a really good character, and I really like, the twist, the Beauty and the Beast twist on this, like, how, it was kind of like Subtle Beauty, by Anne Hunter, where, Anluan being the Beast and, like, having that burden was his family's fault rather than his fault. I really like that kind of plot twist in Beauty and the Beast, and it happens here and in Subtle Beauty. And then I loved Katrine as a character. I loved a lot of the side characters, mainly Rowan and Etri, I think is how you say his name. Was like, their banter was really great, and Magnus was one of my favorite characters. Yeah, so there were some really, really great side characters, and there were some lesser villains that I just wanted to kick and, like, punch. They were actually not as sinister as the main villain, and it was two entirely different situations, but yeah, they were the kind of villains that you just want to like pick them up and drop them off a cliff rather than being truly scared of them. Whereas the main villain, you know, I did want to punch, but also this main villain was sinister enough that you were worried about what they were going to do. So yeah, it was really interesting, and I really loved the old names because this is set during the Norman Conquest, so it's very, it's got some really, really old Irish names in it. And yeah, so I really loved the names. I really loved the legends and the folklore and the atmosphere, as well as the historical aspect. So yeah, this book was pretty perfect. And I especially loved, Catherine and Aunt Luan's relationship in the book. And I feel like that's not really, like, I feel like talking about their relationship in the book isn't really a spoiler because you know if it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, like, you know what's going to happen. So yeah, and there was especially, I specifically loved, I would say, the last, maybe 100 pages, 150 pages or so, probably 100 pages, because there's a situation where Katrine has to leave for a little bit and then come back. I'm not gonna say why or what the circumstances are, but she has to leave for a little while and then come back, and from the time she comes back, there's a specific, like, maybe couple of scenes that are linked together right after she comes back that I just completely loved, and I actually, like, reread them. I reread them separate from reading, like, as soon as I finished it, I kept rereading them, and even while I was still reading it for the first time, I went back and I reread those couple of chapters even before I'd gotten to the ending, because I love them so much. And the reason why there are no tabs, really, in this is because it got to a point where I realized this whole book would be nothing but tabs, and that I would start to get confused about which part on certain pages I loved, so I figured I would just say, hey, I loved this whole book, and not litter it with blue and orange and pink and everything. So, yeah, I really, really loved this, and I also really love this cover, and I should say I also really loved the rich backstory that Juliet Marillier creates for everything in Anne Lewan's family, like the whole curse of his family, and describing all of Whistling Tor, and this world that she creates in Heart's Blood is just phenomenal. So I feel like I have to say that as well. So yeah, I would say somewhere between a 4.5 and a 5. And again, that's just because I don't really know how to feel about the physical abuse part of this. So yeah, this book was just amazing, and I'm so glad it was my first Marillier. And my next one, I think I'll probably try to get Dreamer's Pool out of the library at some point, because I realize there are other books of hers that I want to read before I start the Seven Waters saga. So yeah, anyway, loved this. Please let me know if you have read it. If you haven't read it, but you want to start Juliet Marillier, I would recommend this as a good place to start. But I mean, it's the only one that I've read, so I have really no basis for it, except that it was my first one and I really loved it. So yeah, I recommend it for a first time one. I recommend it if you love Beauty and the Beast. I recommend it if you love Irish folklore. I recommend it if you love history. If you love, like, really haunting, atmospheric, somewhat ghost story-ish stories. So yeah, just so many things, and fantasy, and yeah, just read this if you haven't. I would just highly recommend it. And if you have and you want to talk about it more, please let me know down in the comments. And yep. And I hope I didn't give away too many things with this. Like, I was trying to avoid talking about the villain, and maybe also their gender and everything, and, you know, I was trying to avoid huge spoilers, but yeah, anyway, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.